My friends, I was thinking about a lot of the guys that talk about the old school. I always laugh, there's such a thing as old school. But when it comes to bodybuilding, it's really not an old school because, the new school, just like anything else, a lot of times new is better, but not always. It's not always better. And a lot of the so-called new has been discarded because it found out the new wasn't very productive in a lot of things. I'm not talking about technology. I mean, technology is unbelievable. I'm not even talking about that. There's some things that such, and machinery and human beings are two different things, you see. But we were talking about John Grimek, which I'm sure 99% of you guys never heard of, but he was the father of bodybuilding. I mean, everybody looked up to him. And you know something? He was promoted by Bob Hoffman. New York Barbell Company was primarily, he promoted, Bob promoted weightlifting. He didn't he didn't have much use for bodybuilders. He promoted weightlifting. And Ron Grimek lifted, but he was the top lifter. And his body, the mainstay of his body was his shoulders, his legs, and his arms and his deltoids. He didn't bother too much with lats and pectorals, but he had nice small waist. And he was a short guy. He wasn't, extremely tall. I guess he must have been about 5'10". I think he was less than 5'10", to be honest with you. But in any case, I knew John on the peripheral because he was original. I mean, he started in the 40s. He started when bodybuilding was really frowned upon. And he was an athlete also. He very nimble and everything. A fascinating thing with John was that these hypocrites that are trying to promote that how bodybuilders, there was such a waste, they were stiff, they couldn't move. So they gave this test. I forgot the year it was. They got a good athlete, and they put all these different feats together, wanted to show how superior they were to a lifter and bodybuilder. Well, you know what? John Grimek won by a big margin. And you know something? You know what they did with the study? They shoved it. That's what they do, those studies. They were so sure that they were going to show up bodybuilding, show that bodybuilders were like big elephants. And they took all these different aspects of the body in the testing, and sitting back there, those goddamn hypocrites, it gets me so mad. We were all so upset about it because we knew they were going to give this test, and we were wondering how John was going to do. John beat their prize that they put up, thinking that somehow he didn't realize that John was all together. They did flips and all this stuff. I don't know all the tests they did, but John won. But you know what happened to the study? Shoved it. Didn't come out the way they wanted it to come out. That's the way you got to be on top of these phonies and these hypocrites with these studies. That's why so many of these studies come out one day, tell you vitamin C is no good, then the next day tell you it's a drug. But that's where they are. Anyhow, John Grimek was just, but one thing with John, he believed in very heavy weights. And he had a lot of joint problems later in life. He died in his late 80s because of that. But he was a guy that trained primarily, he somehow pectorals was considered bodybuilders thing. You weren't supposed to get too big of pecs. And he didn't go too much for the lats, but his shoulders, and he was a fantastic basic shape, short, thick, and a great poser. But he was a guy that we all looked up to. John Grimek was the man. And nobody could pose better than him. And he beat Reeves. I think he went up against Reeves twice. Every time he went against Reeves, he won. Didn't have nowhere near the shape Reeves had, but a good shape. And he was the man for us. Now, you know what? The reason I'm telling you this, guys, because a lot of the younger fellas, most of them, the older fellas know of John Grimek or heard of him. But a lot of you younger fellas is like a new world to you. And you think if it didn't happen, if the guy didn't come, wasn't built yesterday, he's old school. Or, he can't tell you nothing. But I can tell you one thing, you learn a lot more from guys like me than you learn from these so-called guys in new school. Because a lot of these guys that come up and try to show you what to do haven't lived themselves. They're learning themselves. So how can they tell you? And I hear these people all the time, and it makes me laugh. And when I say I would have used the drugs if I wasn't hurt and couldn't compete anymore. But before I got hurt, I was considered top guy. I mean, Joe was all ready for me to go to the Mr. Universe to compete. Once I got hurt, it was over with. And I tell you, as I said a number of times, it may sound strange to you, but the best thing happened to me that I did get hurt because I was obsessed with bodybuilding. And if I didn't get hurt, I would overindulge in the juice. And I wouldn't be talking to you now. But guys like John Grimek, you see, I can't expect any fellow that could appreciate John like I did because I grew up with him. I mean, before I could think about training, he was one of the top built men. It was just unbelievable. And my time, to see the body like that. And it was so graceful. But he primarily believed in no chest work. He wasn't a chest work man. You see, he wasn't having the pectoral reason. He didn't. That was like too much of the sissy stuff for the bodybuilders, because he was called a real bodybuilders sissies, even though he did a lot of bodybuilding. He was not a all weightlifter. He was never a top weightlifter, although he was a weightlifter. He wasn't a champion because he put too much time into bodybuilding. But he was enough of a lifter to make Hoffman, that was all lifting, satisfied. But John Grimek was the man, and when I think about it, and you realize the difference in then and now, and realize all the hype now, all the bullshit now, and remember then everything was so solid. We trained solid. We did compound exercises, which one of the guys that made a comment on Mr. Yorkie Lover said. I was quite happy to hear him say that. But see, I have just started reading some of the comments on the videos. The reason why I lean more towards emails, because the guys on the email, they're not looking for the world to hear them critique and put down and hate and all that. They're looking for information. That's why they email me directly. These guys, a lot of these guys that make comments, they make it, for themselves, really, not for whoever read them. That's their way of critiquing or getting their insanity across. Whereas the guys at the emails, they're really serious. So I've been reading the comments too much. I start reading them, and I'm glad I don't read too many of them. But I start reading them, and most of them are complimentary. But I get some of them make me say, "Oh God," where I don't get that in the emails. Because guys that send me the emails are really serious, and they're not sending me an email to critique me. They send me emails to ask me, what do I think of a certain, and they see the videos, but they don't make comments. They send emails to me directly. In any case, the prime thing I'm talking about is John. And if you go to my website, leroycover.com, and look up Bodybuilders My Era, you'll see John Grimek. I mean, we consider him one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time, even though he wouldn't compare today to the guys today, because, of course, things like juice and all that was unheard of then. And but his body was fantastic, and you'd appreciate his body. You're not going to compare to Ronnie Coleman and those guys and thick, big muscles and all that kind of stuff, but you could see the beauty of his body and his development. So that's why I'm talking to you about John. When I talk to you, my friends, I just want you to know that it's a foundation to everything I'm saying. It's not just shooting off at the mouth. I like to hear myself talk. And when I say these guys can't tell me nothing, it's true. You know, they say you can always learn. There's a point where there's no more learning. See, it's a point that you can go past on certain subjects. Technology is entirely different. But when it comes to the human body and exercise and what you do to build your muscles, that's fixed. That's not going to ever change. You're not going to build your bicep if you take a curl, no matter what you dream, think, or what machine you use. You still got to make a curl to your arms. That's fixed. See, the body in itself, and I know it's fixed when I go back to the old days of training and match them up to the day that we have now. See, now, the reason I had a lot of guys also say they want to see what I do for arms. I'm not going to spend 1 second doing an exercise that everybody knows. Every one of these guys are doing videos showing how to exercise. You guys don't need that from me. In any case, to be continued.